Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, Series 2000. This week, I'm excited to visit Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. This book continues a streak of pretty great stories. To be honest, it's kind of starting to feel like Series 2000 is a stronger body of work compared to the original 62, and I'm glad I followed through on reading them. Graveyard Ghouls has some nice gross-out horror with various decaying ghouls, a likable protagonist, and a fresh take on the body swap formula. It's easily one of the better Series 2000 books to check out if you haven't yet. This 1998 cover is pretty great, albeit somewhat misleading. I went into this book expecting full-on zombies, but it's definitely more of a ghost situation going on in this graveyard. It's a nice attention getter though. The 2015 reprint sticks somewhat closer to the ghouls in the book, with these ones being a bit more ghosty, but the ghouls in the book are much more decaying corpses in ghost form. I really like both of these covers, however, I like the rotting zombie look more, so it's the winner for me. As far as merchandise goes, Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls has itself this awesome 1999 t-shirt, featuring the cover in all its glory. It was also among this button series released in 2016, with some of the other more iconic covers. Our front take says, "Dead but not buried," which doesn't really seem to be wordplay on anything, and doesn't really match the plot. But let's check out the back of this book. The fog shimmered up over the dark grass, over the bent scraggly trees, covering the hill, covering the old graveyard, and then I heard the horrifying moan. Through the window pane, I heard a long, low moan floating from the hill, human and animal at the same time. So cold, so sad, so near. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Spencer, and he's currently doing a class presentation on his hometown. He lives in a town called Highgrave, which has some poor city planning. The graveyard in this town is so centrally located and on top of a massive hill that it allows it to be the town's focal point at all times. It's not the most welcoming vibes, but very atmospheric for Goosebumps. Spencer is not into this graveyard-themed town, and it's the source of many nightmares for him, including ones involving floating gravestones and graveyard ghouls out for blood. He's not alone in this, his whole family is plagued by graveyard ghoul nightmares. Spencer also has one of the bigger Goosebumps families so far, with younger brothers Jason and Remy, and also a younger sister Charlotte. The lore of this town says that the graves are too high up, so the dead can't rest. This causes the dead to become resentful as they stare at the peaceful town down below them, and they wander the graveyard at night. Spencer finishes his presentation, and his friend Audra gives him a thumbs up, while two bullies, Buddy and Frank, mock Spencer's fears. The teacher then announces they will actually be taking a field trip up to this graveyard the next day, which Spencer is not thrilled about. The story then hops to a chaotic dinner scene with Remy and Charlotte having a string bean and mashed potato fight, while Jason keeps jabbering about the word metamorphosis, which could be considered some foreshadowing. Spencer ends up babysitting his siblings for the night, and after he distracts the kids with a cartoon VHS, he gazes out the window at Highgrave Hill. He notices strange ghostly lights moving around in the fog, darting over gravestones. He also can hear some low, sad moaning echoing down the hill. Nothing else comes of this scene, and we are suddenly on a field trip hiking up to the graveyard. Spencer is already having a rough time because he managed to misplace his backpack at home, so he had to borrow his younger brother's little kid backpack that just so happens to be bright purple and subject to the ridicule of middle school boys. It's a cold, cloudless fall day, and Spencer and Audra are exploring the graveyard. Audra notes that it's really chilly out and zips up her jacket. Spencer proceeds to unzip his jacket because he wants Audra to think he is rugged. I don't know why I thought this was so funny, but I did. Spencer wants to be a Goosebumps macho man. This moment of manliness is quickly followed by Spencer becoming distracted by a spider and tripping over a low gravestone. The kids have been instructed to collect gravestone rubbings, so when they return to class they can discuss what they learned about their town's history. One of the first rubbings Audra collects involves a man who's put to death via hanging, and this seems to really get the kids going. Spencer then finds the grave of two brothers who died together and were buried together, which he thinks is kind of unusual. This gravestone also has a massive stone crow on it, making it extra memorable. Spencer thinks Audra will find this gravestone particularly interesting, but when he tries to show her, he once again trips and crashes right into the double tombstone, knocking it over. He hears a mysterious cry that no one else seems to hear. Audra then points out at the bottom of this gravestone it says, "Disturb our rest at your own peril." So things aren't looking good for Spencer. The teacher then announces that it's time to go, and everybody marches out of the graveyard, leaving Spencer to struggle and ultimately fail at placing the gravestone right side up again. He goes to catch up with the class when a hand shoots out of the ground and wraps around his ankle. Spencer is able to break away and come screeching down the hill towards the other kids, but when he turns around to show them the ghoul hand, it's nowhere to be seen. He ends up telling himself that he must have just got tangled up in a vine or something and heads back to school with the rest of the class. That night, little brother Jason starts freaking out about his missing backpack, and it occurs to Spencer that he forgot it by a tree in the graveyard when escaping the graveyard ghoul hand. He decides to be a good big brother and leaves to retrieve it that night. I would at least wait till daylight before wandering off into a graveyard. Actually, graveyard side note, I scared the shit out of myself one time where I had just watched Night of the Living Dead for the first time and had to go pick up my younger sister, and just so happened to pass by a foggy, creepy-ass graveyard along the way, It was such a perfect horror movie moment that I thought for sure the universe was going to get me that night. Anyways, Spencer decides to call Audra to make this little graveyard adventure less traumatic. She agrees to come with him, and when they meet up, she casually mentions that she told Bully Frank what they were up to, so Frank will be making a graveyard appearance for sure. Once in the graveyard, they wander around the rows of creepy graves until Spencer spots double tombstones from earlier. As he's bending over to pick up the backpack, he hears ragged breathing behind him and thinks it's Audra at first, until he spots her across the graveyard looking at a baby's tombstone. He whirls around and sees nothing behind him, but is certain he heard breathing. He races over to Audra, who's busy reading the gravestone lullaby. Spencer remembers he also forgot his baseball cap, so he uses the moment to locate it too. He eventually spots the hat, but when he goes to pick it up, he finds a rotting human head underneath it, complete with some slack-jawed black toothless gums. Spencer nearly falls over screaming, but Audra appears and there's no head to be found. Spencer thinks this has to be the work of Graveyard Ghouls, which, I should clarify, seem to be more ghost than actual zombie. Spencer's trying to explain what happened through chattering teeth when they hear scraping footsteps approaching. They hear a voice moan, "Give me back my head," but this just ends up being the work of Buddy and Frank, along with two other guys from school who don't get names. The group of bullies heard all of Spencer's ghoul talk and begin taunting him, before raising the stakes. The bullies decide it'll be fun to tie him to a frickin' gravestone in the graveyard. Audra then makes the questionable choice to leave for help, leaving Spencer all alone to be tied up with this group of assholes. The bullies chant, Graveyard Ghouls, Graveyard Ghouls," at him before taking off out of the cemetery, leaving him all alone in the graveyard tied to a tombstone. Spencer's getting one of the worst hazings in Goosebumps so far. Spencer starts screaming bloody murder, but this just wakes up the bats from a nearby tree, and they all flutter past him as he struggles and fails to escape from the ropes. We spend a few pages with Spencer trying his best to wiggle free, but it's hopeless. He's just gonna have to wait for Audra. This would be so traumatizing. While he tries to calm himself down, he notices the gravestone starting to slowly shift around. He can hear low moans around the graveyard, and a sour green mist begins to rise up from the graves. He then hears a voice in the mist calling out, "I need your body." This stinky green mist begins to swirl around him, and he starts to feel strange as the voice keeps repeating how it needs his body. Spencer feels a heavy hand press onto his head, and suddenly he feels too weak to move. Soon, his whole body is radiating with pain as a cold sensation moves from his head down into his chest. Spencer is now struggling to think or even breathe when he hears a ripping sound. He then opens his eyes to see he's floating into the sky and can see his own body tied to a tombstone below. He realizes he no longer has a body, he's just his own thoughts now, like some sort of spirit. Spencer is then horrified as he watches his body come to life with a cruel sneer because some mystery graveyard ghoul is now in possession of it, which he watches hopelessly as a ghost above. The ghoul then begins speaking through Spencer's body, thanking him for giving over the body and telling him it's his own fault for disturbing the grave. Spencer then watches helplessly as Audra returns with his parents, who untie his body and take it home with the ghoul in full possession. Spencer tries to scream, but the only one who can hear him is the ghoul himself, who seems to be taking a lot of pleasure in Spencer's suffering. Spencer tries to grab a flashlight, but realizes he can't actually touch anything in the spirit state. Spencer attempts to follow his family out of the graveyard, but the wind suddenly picks up and forces him back to the double gravestone that started this mess. He's then pulled into the ground where a voice tells him just to go to sleep forever. At first, he starts to give in and falls asleep, but a falling branch jolts him back awake and he forces himself back out of the grave. Once above ground, he learns he has no real power over his current form and is kind of just at the mercy of wherever the wind blows him around the graveyard. Spencer begins to wonder what the ghoul intends to do with his body and becomes concerned about the safety of his family. He looks around and spots other ghouls, young and old, floating above their graves, all in various states of decay, with rotting flesh and worms wiggling around in holes in their body. Some of the ghouls are nearly full skeleton with clumps of hair still attached and clothes half rotted away. He spots one ghoul with hundreds of tiny gray slugs eating away at the flesh on the back of her skull. All of this is fairly detailed and pretty graphic for Goosebumps. One of the ghouls with a rotting black tongue welcomes Spencer to the club and declares he's a graveyard ghoul now too. Spencer screams how he doesn't want to be a graveyard ghoul, but the other ghouls are like, "Too bad, you're one of us now." The ghouls explain that the legends are true, they can't sleep and they haunt the graveyard every night instead. The ghouls then all join hands and begin to dance around the graveyard, while Spencer floats above them. The dancing seems to be pulling Spencer into them, but he's able to fight it. One of the ghouls finally explains who exactly took Spencer's body. We learn the ghoul was Oswald Mancy, and he just happened to be extra evil. Both Oswald and his brother were mean right down to their core, and will never return Spencer's body. The ghouls begin to dance again, and Spencer can feel the urge to join them returning. The wind picks up and he's blown to a different section of the graveyard, where he comes across a swarm of rats, eating everything in their path. He watches helplessly as the rats devour a rabbit in minutes, leaving nothing but bones and a puddle of blood behind. This seems very aggressive for rats. They're not like army ants or piranhas. Spencer then knows what he has to do. He needs to take control of one of these rats' bodies in order to escape the graveyard. He's not really sure where he'll go from there, but he knows this is his best option currently. He forces himself down onto the rat's head like the ghoul did to him, and he can feel the rat thrashing with fear until it stops moving. Spencer then now can feel he's inside another creature, and it's all hot and wet, which doesn't sound right. Spencer has control of the rat's body now, and has to navigate having 4 legs versus 2. He can hear a small voice calling for help, but he ignores it and races out of the graveyard. I was wondering if he can hear the rat's spirit he just forced out calling for help, but we'll see. Spencer Rat makes his way home, but along the way he stops to eat a nice juicy worm because he can't fully control his rat's instincts, and make sure he got every last drop of worm guts before moving on. It takes a lot of energy being a rat, and before he can make it home, he needs to stop for another snack. This time he spots an overturned garbage can and starts helping himself to some rotting meat. He then finds himself in the middle of a rat battle because the other rats can tell he's not one of them. If you think about it from the other rat's perspective, he really did possess their friend. Spencer is able to escape the other rats and finally spots his house. Just as he's approaching it, he suddenly is filled with rat fear instincts, like his spidey sense is tingling. He knows danger is somewhere nearby and spots the family cat Duke. Spencer's stupid ass is like, whew, Duke won't hurt me. But Duke has other plans. Duke pounces on Spencer Rat and begins chomping and swinging him around. Spencer starts to think this is how he's gonna die, in the body of a rat murdered by his own cat. But Spencer knows what he has to do. He flings himself onto Duke's head and forces his way into the cat's mind, just like he did to the rat. He looks down and sees the now lifeless body of the rat, so he's now in full possession of Duke's body. I think that means he just killed his cat. The rules around this are kind of blurry. Spencer feels bad about what he did to Duke, but he wants his body back and thinks the rest of his family could be in danger as long as the ghoul Oswald is around. He enters the house through the cat door and immediately races to his parents' bed where they were sound asleep. Well, were sound asleep, because Spencer proceeds to wake them up by yowling frantically at them. They don't speak cat, so Spencer tries to write them a note. Cats suck at writing, so this fails too. And he's already thoroughly irritated his parents, so his dad tosses Spencer Cat out the back door and locks the cat door too. Spencer ends up crawling through his own bedroom window, where you can see that the ghoul has trashed the place. His pillows are shredded, the sheets are ripped, and the door is hanging crooked from the hinge. When Spencer Cat makes it downstairs to the kitchen, he spots the ghoul eating everything out of the fridge like a wild animal. This includes guzzling mayonnaise right out of the jar. Yuck. The ghoul, Oswald, notices Spencer and just smiles and lets him know that he knows who he is and that he won't be getting his body back anytime soon. Oswald declares he doesn't really want this scrawny body and plans on switching it into a bigger, stronger body and destroying Spencer's body in the process. Spencer Cat leaps onto Oswald, but he just grabs Spencer by the throat and begins to squeeze tightly. Oswald takes Spencer Cat down into the basement and seals him in a cardboard box, and then walks away, leaving Spencer to struggle helplessly inside the box. In the box, he encounters a spider, and at first he tries to squash it, before deciding he can use the spider to regain control of his actual body, hopefully. Spencer forces himself into the spider and becomes Spider Spencer, and is able to squeeze out of the box. He then scurries up to his brother Jason's bedroom, and proceeds to take control of Jason's body. I'm still a little confused on what happens to Jason's spirit in the meantime, because didn't doing this possibly kill the rat and Duke? Spencer then races downstairs in Jason's body to tell his parents everything, but they're busy trying to figure out who trashed the kitchen, and are under the impression that somebody must have broken in. Spencer races outside and follows a path of destruction. There's overturned trash cans, slashed tires, and house fires, all courtesy of Oswald the Ghoul. He eventually catches up with Oswald, just in time to watch him snatch an axe from a firefighter and start swinging it at people like a maniac. Oswald then chops down some mailboxes and begins chopping up a garage door. I'm pretty sure somebody would have shot Oswald by now. This is America, people get shot for less than this all the time. Speaking of shootings, the cops appear right on cue. They tell the ghoul to drop the axe, but he just swings it at their heads instead. Spencer must be white because this doesn't get him shot. The actual Spencer then begins begging, "Don't shoot, that's my body." The cops really don't have time for two crazy kids and tell him to get lost, but in the time it took to do this, Oswald is gone. Spencer hears screams nearby and comes across Oswald chopping up bully Frank's shed and setting it on fire. The shed fire catches a nearby tree on fire, which will catch Frank's actual house on fire if no one stops it. Spencer goes to warn Frank, but he's already out the door getting into a fight with the ghoul. Oswald declares that Frank has the kind of big, strong body he deserves and plans on possessing that one instead. He will then throw Spencer's body into the fire so he can watch it burn. Oswald then taunts Spencer, asking if he wants to watch his hands burn, and starts to put his fingers into the flames. Oswald's kind of fucked up. Frank jumps in and pins Oswald down, but then starts shouting that his head hurts because the ghoul is now trying to possess Frank instead. Spencer is able to disrupt this possession, and Frank takes off in search of the police, causing the ghoul to flee again, still in Spencer's body. The actual Spencer decides his best shot now is telling Audra about the ghoul, since she was in the graveyard when he knocked over the gravestone, and he thinks if he can get at least one other person to believe him, he'll have a better shot at stopping Oswald. We then have a bit of a plot twist because as Audra approaches her bedroom window, we can see that she has the same blank black soulless eyes as the ghoul in Spencer's body. This all means that Audra was the one that Spencer heard calling for help as he left the graveyard earlier. That makes more sense than the spirit of a rat like I was thinking originally. Audra is revealed to be Martin Mancy, the evil brother of Oswald. The Martin ghoul then grabs Spencer by the shoulders and chucks him into the wall, knocking him unconscious briefly. Spencer comes to and jumps out of the window. He races for the graveyard in search of Audra's spirit. Once in the graveyard, he's swarmed by the various ghouls who want his body. The ghouls circle around him and begin to perform their dance, which causes Spencer to feel weak and dizzy, but I guess he decides just to not be possessed and runs away from the ghouls. He then finds Audra's spirit under a tree because she still hasn't figured out how to move and is at the mercy of the wind. Spencer tells her she can possess other bodies if she just concentrates hard enough. A black lab wanders into the cemetery in search of human bones to snack on, and Spencer distracts the dog long enough for Audra to possess it. Spencer and the Audra dog then take off back to town, where they can see more of the ghouls' destruction. They come across Frank's house that has now been fully burnt to the ground. Spencer feels sorry for him, even though this is all kind of his fault for tying Spencer up in a graveyard to start with. They wander the neighborhood until they spot Oswald and Spencer's body and Martin and Audra's body, axes in hand, still destroying shit. There is no way these kids would have been shot by now. The two imposter ghouls have their sights set on Spencer's house and proceed to bust in the front door and smash in the living room window, leaving Charlotte and Remy screaming in terror because they think their brother has lost his damn mind. The parents appear and Oswald gets ready to take a swing at the dad with an axe when Audra dog startles the ghouls. The two ghouls then begin chopping up furniture while declaring, "The dead shall live and the living shall die." One of the ghouls chucks Audra dog at a wall and chases Spencer outside. Suddenly, Spencer can hear a voice demanding that he give him back his body and realizes it's Jason's spirit. Jason tries to force himself back in control of his body, but Spencer's like, "No, I'm not done using it yet," causing Jason's body to dance around the yard as the two brothers struggle for control. At least we know Spencer didn't accidentally kill his brother. This draws the attention of the neighborhood as Jason's body dances wildly across the yard. This dancing seems to weaken the two ghouls, and Spencer suddenly remembers what he read on a gravestone earlier: defeat death only by living. Spencer decides to dance with all of his heart, and this includes dancing with Audra dog, forcing the ghouls out of he and Audra's bodies. Jason takes full control back over his own body, forcing Spencer to float as a spirit. Spencer then sees his own lifeless body next to Audra's body and thinks it's too late. He gives it one last shot, and he and Audra force their way into their dead bodies. However, in a final page twist, Spencer takes a look at his hands and notices his beautifully painted fingernails, and it's revealed they both accidentally hopped into the wrong body. So that's how this one ends. All of this chaos, and we're just going to end on, oops, wrong body. Overall, I thought Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls was another solid addition to the Series 2000 books. This one didn't hold back on the Goosebumps gore, with plenty of gross out decaying ghouls. It also lets the ghouls be full-on, uninhibited villains, chasing people with axes, committing arson, and threatening murder. For a moment, I was worried this book was going to fall into the lull of animal body swap stories, like we've seen in previous books, but it switched out of this before the formula got tired. Some parts get a little sloppy, like the rules around body swapping, and the final twist feels somewhat anticlimactic after all the crazy shit that went down in this book. I'm still going to give this one 5 out of 5 gravestones. This book really dived into the possession theme and left me wondering how Spencer and Audra will be dealing with the fallout from the ghouls' destruction. As far as the vomit count goes, despite the many gross out moments in this book, there was no vomiting in Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. This leaves our Series 2000 total at 11 vomits. Well, that's it for Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. This book was fast-paced at a pretty good time. Next week is Brain Juice, and I'm pretty sure I read this one at some point because the cover is easily the most recognizable of the Series 2000 books for me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. Did you enjoy this one as much as me? What was wrong with these Mancy brothers? What animal would you body swap with? I'm pretty sure I would have been content just to spend my life as a spoiled house cat. Also, what did you think of my undead, zombie, possession, mishmash horror clips this week? I probably should have included some ghosts in there too, but there's already a lot going on. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,